appreciate it. And we're going to get deep into this subject. I was listening to somebody's broadcast on a similar subject. I think he called it three great ways to make sure your pastor never uses you. So shout out to Mark Moore Jr. And what he actually taught was something very controlling that I found in some ways kind of laughable. But it wasn't surprising because the church teaches a certain type of submission that is conducive to the personal agendas and ambitions of people in leadership, and not necessarily conducive to kingdom purposes, because there is a difference. That's why I'm asking the question, are you a ministry asset or are you a kingdom asset? And the truth is, most of how we teach, most of how we teach people to submit to authority turns them into a ministry asset, but not a kingdom asset. Now, it's more useful to the leader to do that. It's a lot more useful. And I won't say I'm tempted to do that, because that's not a temptation for me. I don't have a desire to turn people into ministry assets. I don't try to do that. I try to turn them into kingdom assets, which makes them less immediately useful to me. And maybe if I did it the way everybody else did, turning them into ministry assets, maybe my ministry would be bigger, maybe I'd make a lot more money. Well, not maybe. I would definitely make a lot more money. And that would be good for me in a variety of ways, but I don't feel right about that. And here's the tragedy, is that the norm in ministry today is that we turn people into ministry assets, not kingdom assets. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm trying to wait and see if a few more people pop on, because this is kind of important, and I'm hoping some people show up. Hey there, New Life UC, welcome to the broadcast. We are talking about ministry assets versus kingdom assets, and I'm asking the question: are you a ministry asset or a kingdom asset? And there is a difference, and it seems like I might be splitting hairs. Maybe somebody thinks I'm splitting hairs, but I'm not. There's a reason why I'm asking that question. Hey there, Carrie L, welcome to the broadcast. Legacy 27. Howdy, how you doing? We're getting into this thing. Hopefully you stick around. Please feel free to invite followers. Thank you for the hearts, folks. I hope everybody gives me hearts, because I'm going to try to earn them. It's fun to try to earn the hearts. Everybody else gets hearts just for... I wish I was better looking. Maybe I'd get more hearts that way. But anyhow, yeah, kingdom and church is two very different things. Most people in the church are church-minded, not kingdom-minded. And here's the thing. Most ministers, most leaders, most pastors, apostles, whatever they want to call themselves, say they're Maximo, welcome to the broadcast. This is the Rift Online Church, building God's kingdom in you. But most pastors I know of, they are church-minded, not kingdom-minded. Their concern is their ministry. Now, don't get me wrong, you got to tend your ministry, you got to tend your flock. I'm not saying don't be concerned with that. What I am saying is, we don't really have a kingdom mindset, for the most part. And usually, one of the scriptures that's a favorite among pastors to use when they want to browbeat people into submission, don't get me wrong, you got to submit to authority. I often say, you will have as much authority as you submit to. A lot of folks want to have spiritual authority. Here, there, Kenneth Clark. People want to have spiritual authority. They want to cast out devils. They want to heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers. They want to have authority, but they don't submit to any. And it don't work that way. I've had people sometimes ask me about, they don't always directly ask me, but they wonder about certain things that happen with this ministry, or with me in particular, where let's say they got a bit of warfare, they're dealing with a spirit and they can't get rid of it, they can't make this demon leave their house. And I might call them on the phone and say, okay, put me on speaker, or over the internet, or whatever. And I'll tell it to leave, and it leaves, and it doesn't come back. And they want to know, why do you have that kind of authority? Because I submit to authority. Now, when I was in the church, I submitted to the authority of the house, even though the authority of the house had some issues. Even though he wasn't leading properly, I still submitted. Now, I didn't go along with stuff that I knew wasn't right. Because there's some people who try to say that it's wrong to only comply when you agree. That God calls you to submit, not to agree. And there's a little bit of truth to that. Because not everything a leader is going to do is necessarily on your pay grade. There's reasons why he's doing what he's doing that you may not be privy to, that you may not need to know. Now, I don't like to do that. I know a lot of leaders play that game where they say, well, you don't need to know. You don't need to know why. You just need to obey. And it seems more like a power trip. I like telling people why we're doing something the way we're doing it. Because having been under authority, I know what it's like to be under leaders and managers in business and all that don't want to tell you why. They want you to do something the certain way they want to do it. And they're making you do something the hard way when there's an easier way, a better way, a more efficient way. And they're making you do it this way and won't tell you why. And my perspective on that is, why have the drama? Why have the confusion? Why create resentment? Why not just tell people why? Now, there may be some cases in which God will direct a leader not to disclose why. And I guess that can happen. But not all the time. In fact, when God laid out the law with Moses, they were told why about everything. Because, oh, that's the Old Testament. The Old Testament points to the New. And Moses said, the Lord will raise up a prophet like unto me. That's Deuteronomy 18:15. So, if you are a prophet raised up by God and not by yourself, if you're not off the reservation, if you're actually submitted to God as a leader, you should have, especially if you're a prophet, you should have some resemblance to Moses. And one of Moses' characteristics was that with Moses, you were getting an explanation. You were being told why God wanted something a certain kind of way. They didn't really leave a whole lot. It wasn't a mystery. God said, do this way. It wasn't really a mystery most of the time. I can't think of, right now offhand, I can't think of any examples where Moses didn't tell them why they were doing what they were doing. Oh my goodness, we want to play God's people like that. And usually we try to play it deep and mysterious, and it's not because God is leading us to. Most of the time, it's just we're enjoying the power trip, and we also want to make it seem deep so that they don't question our judgment. Because the truth is, we as leaders are human, and sometimes our judgment is faulty. Or sometimes we just didn't see the whole picture. The Bible says every purpose is established by counsel. It also says that that's in Proverbs 20:18. And in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. Another passage says that without counsel, purposes are disappointed. But in the multitude of counselors, they are established. It's Proverbs 15:22. So as a leader, you can't be such a grand poobah that nobody can tell you anything. Because you're supposed to, if you want that purpose to be established, you need a multitude of counselors. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody who's part of the ministry necessarily gets to have a say in how things are done. The kingdom of God is not a democracy. But if you're completely closed off to what they have to say, sometimes God may speak through them. God isn't. I'm a prophet of God, and as far as I know, I've never given a prophetic word that was inaccurate or which failed to come to pass. But I know I don't see everything, and I see plenty. I see stuff I wish I hadn't seen. I know stuff I wish I didn't know. There's some stuff right now I got on my mind, and some stuff I've known and I've seen that on a personal level really bothers me. And I kind of wish I didn't know. And yet, I don't see everything. Yet, I don't know everything. And so I don't tell our members, oh, you have no say in this. Don't get me wrong. The Rift Online Church is not a democracy. It's a theocracy. I'm not in charge of it. He is. What he says goes. And if he happens to speak through somebody else and says this is how it's got to be, and I know it was God that said it, guess what? We're going with what God said. I don't care if it came out of the mouth of the newest member. If God said it, God said it. Well, one of the scriptures that's so beloved by leaders when they want to beat people into submission. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's Hebrews 13:17. Obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy, not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. And this usually gets used to tell people that you got to obey. In fact, in the Spanish, it says obey your pastors. I don't know why they use the word pastors there, because that's not what the Greek says. But this is how the prospective leaders take with this, that you just have to obey. You don't got to obey. Even in the military, in military law, I was in the United States Marine Corps, you are not required to obey an unlawful command. Of course, these days, in Obama's military, it seems anything that's awful and evil and wrong goes. Everything's upside down. But the way it's supposed to work is you're not required to obey an unlawful command. Your commanding officer tells you to shoot a 4-year-old boy, you don't got to shoot him, because he's giving you an unlawful command. Even in the military, we understand that. But somehow in the church, we get in the church and we think this means that you're supposed to obey the pastor even when he's wrong. I remember my pastor used to say, God will never take your side against me, not even when I'm wrong. Or not even if I'm wrong. And I sat there thinking, I wanted to say it out loud, and probably these days I would. I would probably raise my hand up. Question. Can we ask Ahab about that? Can we ask Saul about that? Can we ask Manasseh about that? Can we ask Rehoboam and Jeroboam? Can we ask Nebuchadnezzar about that? In Daniel chapter 4? Can we ask Pharaoh about that? In the book of Exodus? I wish we could go back in time and ask them, see what they have to say if God will never take sides against leaders. Or if God will side with you when you're wrong. Really? My Bible says that if somebody is in sin and they're doing the wrong thing, you can't even say Godspeed to them, because in so doing you partake in their sin. Like, I used to not say God, and I still don't. I won't say God bless you to a person I know isn't right, because I'm not wishing God's blessing on you when I know you're not right, because that's going to make me, because we say that the way people used to say Godspeed, that would make me a partaker in your sin. And ain't nobody got time for that. Welcome back, Scud RPI. Not sure what you're saying about. I thought that was pretty straightforward. If, let me find it. Let's see, that is in 2 John chapter 1, verse 10. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed. And then it goes on to say that you'll be a partaker of his sin. So, also, if someone's not preaching right, they bring you another gospel. They're not preaching this gospel, the gospel that the first apostles preached. You can't welcome them into your home, let them in your personal space, and you can't even bid them Godspeed. Because lots of times we don't agree with somebody. We know they're not right. We'll say, well, I wish you the best. No, I don't wish anybody the best who's not in the will of God. I'm not going to say that, because to me that sounds like saying Godspeed. And we don't even take that seriously. And I'm saying that to say this, that if the Bible says that, then how can I dare say, if it's that serious that I can't even say Godspeed to somebody, how can we say, if God is that serious about right and wrong, how can we dare say, or how can we believe that God is going to side with somebody when they're wrong? That just doesn't make any sense. It's not consistent with Scripture. I can't find one Scripture where God sided with somebody when they were dead wrong. You won't find a situation where God said, this person is wrong, but I'm going to stick up for him. I'm on his side. because that would mean that God is taking sides against what is right. That doesn't make any sense. No, David's not an example of that. I mean, we could try to say that God took his side when he was wrong. Really, God took his kingdom away from him. He was being hunted by his own son and had to pray for that advisor, Ahithophel's counsel, to be turned into foolishness. Because he knew Ahithophel would give him good advice, and he prayed for his counsel to be viewed as foolishness, because if Absalom had followed Ahithophel's advice, he would have caught David. Not only was his son hunting him down, but his son screwed all his wives on the roof of the palace in front of everybody. Does that sound like God sided with David when he was wrong? I don't know about you, but I would take it kind of personally if God let somebody have their way with my wife in front of everybody. I would take that kind of person. I would not. I feel like God was on my side if that happened. Especially if I knew God was behind it, I'd have to say God is probably not on my side. Call me crazy, but it would seem that way. So there was a whole bunch of stuff attached to that when David did what he did to Uriah the Hittite. In fact, later on, long after David was dead, when God would refer to David, he would say that David pleased me in all his ways, except for the matter of Uriah the Hittite. This is the same God who says when he forgives you, he casts your sin into the sea of forgetfulness and remembers it no more. But with David, God remembered it. The sword will never depart from your house. Does that sound like God sided with David when he was wrong? To this day, that is probably the reason why Israel is in a constant state of warfare. That's David's fault. Still sound like God took his side when he's wrong? No, he doesn't. God had compassion on, God had mercy on, but God still laid the smackdown on the house of David. Now God may choose to have mercy on you, but he's still going to correct you. You're still getting it says all are partakers. We're all partakers of God's correction, God's chastening, if we're sons. So you're going to get your spankings. That's going to happen sooner or later. If you're wrong, he's not going to take your side when you're wrong. He's still going to love you if you're not obstinate in remaining in wrong. Welcome back, Cariel. But God doesn't take your side when you're wrong. And I know a lot of preachers try to preach that. I've heard preachers say, "Oh, God will uphold the man of God even in his sin," and try to make the argument that a man of God could be doing all kind of crazy stuff and not living right and be an adulterer, be a fornicator, be a down low brother, and all that, and God will still be on his side. No, it don't work that way. It doesn't work that way. I pray not to be in error. I study diligently to try and make sure that I'm not. I'm a big fan of keeping my mouth shut unless I'm 100% certain that what I'm saying is the truth. Because even before I got right with God, I've always hated being wrong. I don't like to be wrong. So I try to make sure I'm right. Now that having been said, they say this to you, and the word that's used, that's translated as submit in the New Testament, if we take it literally, it's arranged according to rank, which still has some of the meaning of the modern meaning of submit, but has a different connotation. So there is such a thing as rank in the kingdom. But here's the problem with it. The way we ask people to submit in ministry is really only to make them a ministry asset. Why do you think so many leaders will get you just free enough to make you useful to them? Church I was in, they helped me a little bit. Helped me get just free enough where Now I wasn't so plagued down by the devil that I had some free time to do artwork and graphic design for them, where I would be willing to clean the church and run errands and do this and do that and join the worship team, join the dance team, join this and join that. And if something needed to be done, Brother Sam was there. So I became useful to them. But guess what? I still had issues. I still had problems. I was still an emotional wreck. I still had all kinds of deep emotional wounds that were not healed. Now, some people would even say it. It's okay, you're saying it, but you're not doing anything to help me. You're acting like it's my fault. And they'll treat you that way, too. When they're mad at you, they'll talk about it to try to embarrass you. And, okay, you're saying I got all these deep hurts. Okay, how about that healing anointing you claim you have? Can we get some of that? Nope. Why? Because they didn't care. Because they cared to some degree, but didn't care enough. It's like it says in Jeremiah, in Jeremiah 6:14, it says that they have healed slightly the wound of the daughter of my people, or the wound of my people. That they treated my people's wound as if it weren't serious. They just kind of patch you up, do a little triage, keep you from bleeding to death, but they don't help you get fully healed. And this is what we do in ministry. We ask people to submit, and we demand submission from them, but we don't heal them. We don't mature them. We don't restore them. We patch them up just enough so that they can get around a little bit, and they can be useful to us. And sometimes leaders do it on purpose, because some of them know that if you ever got completely free, you're going to walk in the fullness of your purpose, which may be beyond what they're planning for you. I'm speaking from experience. Because that pastor knew what I was called to do. And he knew if I ever got to a point where I was really healed and I was in a position to take what God had placed in me and start sharing it with people, there wouldn't be room for me in his church, not with his ego, not with his insecurity. I'd have to go somewhere else. Because he's the brother that, you teach a Sunday school for 17 weeks straight on spiritual authority. He goes and has a deacon erase all your master tapes. Because they're outselling his. I wasn't even getting any of that money. It's like, dude, just let them sell. You're getting paid off this. I'm not. But he erased all the tapes. I didn't even get any copies. It was a good teaching too. I taught for 17 weeks on spiritual authority. And my goodness, they weren't interested in me being healed. That's why, lately I've been doing this thing. And if I know somebody's got some warfare and they got a situation, they got something that they're having trouble with, I'm going to pray with them. The other week I was fasting with somebody. Not even a member of the Rift. Because they had a situation. And I felt they needed to fast. I told them they needed to fast. And I said, look, I'm going to fast with you because I'm not going to tell you to do something and then not help you do it. We want people to submit to us, but we don't do anything for them. We want commitment from people without giving commitment to people. And the saints do that too. If you're the kind of preacher where you're not a pimp and you're not taking advantage of them, it's like they flip the script and they start trying to do that to you. They want a commitment from you, but don't make a commitment to you, and that's wrong in either direction. We can't function as someone on Periscope from Corner Brook. I don't even know where Corner Brook is. I've heard of it, but I don't know where it is. But anyhow, I do that because I want people to achieve what God wants them to achieve. I want them to become what God intended them to be. I don't like seeing people spiritually crippled. I don't like seeing people emotionally crippled. I don't like seeing people not walking in what they were intended to walk in. Hi there, Vince. But a lot of leaders don't want to do stuff like that because they're going to heal you slightly. They'll get you off the crack. We're not talking about Romans tonight. They might get you off the drugs because that's going to get in the way of things because they can't really use you too much in the church if you're strung out on crack. So they got to get you out of that, get you out of the whorehouse because that's not going to look good. They're worship leaders working at the whorehouse. Well, that's quite wrong of them to do, and they're going to have to answer to God for that. For that. But oh goodness, yeah. Well, that's another thing. When we talk about submission, we like to use it to control people, and that's part of what I was getting at with what I've been saying. We keep people in a state where they're not fully healed. So if you're not fully healed, you can't fully function. If you think I'm wrong, well, I won't literally do this, but if I break your leg and then sign you up for a boxing match, you think you're going to win? Maybe if you're Bruce Lee. Most people I know, they're not going to win a boxing match with a broken leg. Especially if it's kickboxing. Be a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest. You're gonna have a problem on your hands. But we do this spiritually. We leave people damaged. We leave them hurt. We leave them wounded. And then we make use of them. We don't help them get fully healed because if they're fully healed, they can become fully functional. And what if you got a member in your church who you want him cleaning the church, and you want him teaching a Sunday school once in a while, but God called him to be an apostle. Now, there's nothing wrong with him cleaning the church. Maybe that's good for now, but one day he's going to have to walk in that. But he needs to get healed first. He needs to get restored. He needs to he needs to forgive a bunch of people. He needs to. His heart's got to be changed. He's got to get all this damage out so that when he teaches the word, it's not corrupted by his hurt, that he's not teaching out of his woundedness, but teaching from a place of wholeness. So that he can minister restoration to others. But very often, we leave people in that wounded state because then we can hey, we don't want to have to bother finding somebody else to clean the church or somebody else to teach a Sunday school once in a while, and we're going to keep them there, and that's what a lot of leaders do. Some of them do it knowingly, some of them do it unknowingly, but most of them do it. Where it's like we're afraid to let people grow up, and we make them into ministry assets, not kingdom assets. Now, I'm not saying you can't serve in your church. You should serve. There's a saying in Spanish, es que no sirve, no sirve. Because the word serve has two meanings in Spanish. The first one means he does not serve, and the second part says does not serve, meaning he has no use, that he's not useful. He's useless. If you don't serve, you are useless. And that's true. But here's the thing. Not everybody is called to be an usher for the rest of their life. Not everybody's called to be cleaning the church the rest of their life. Not everybody's called to to be on the pastoral banquet committee for the rest of their life. We make it out. Leaders take these people and make them into ministry assets for their personal ministry, for their local church, and nothing else. Nothing wrong with servitude. But here's the thing. It's almost like we got a period of indenture. We treat it like the business world where you're paying your dues or whatever. And what we've done to people is we keep them in that place where God's way is promotion. Now there's some people they're not called to the work of the ministry, and that's okay. They'll stay in your lane, do what God called you to do. But we have to. Here's another thing. Very often we refuse to use people in a way that's conducive to the call on their life. We don't put them to work. We don't find a use for them that is that's going to help them prepare for what God has for them to do. Yeah, I agree with that. I know one church where, oh my goodness, she turned her whole church into flunkies because she got them the revelation they need to serve the prophet. They clean her house. They need they clean her house. They wash her car. They take her dry cleaning out. They do her laundry. She's got a whole staff of servants. I don't know if she's still doing that, but when I was in Trenton, she was still doing that. Yeah, and usually, yeah, well, part of that, there's a reason for that. People in general are selfish. So a lot of people don't like to serve. And I said this in another broadcast, I'll say it again, Amos 3 and 7. He reveals his secrets to his servants, the prophets. We want to know kingdom secrets, but we don't want to serve. You know how much I learned, how much revelation I got while I was vacuuming the church? They'd call me up Saturday night, 9 p.m. Couldn't call me during the day. Brother Sam, Sister Donna, and them were doing some ministry in the church today, and they made a mess, and the church is all tore up. And I got to work tonight, so I can't clean it. Can you come and clean the church? I lived an hour away. I didn't even have a car. I had to take the train. So because he told me so late, I had to catch the 11:15 train out of Linden, New Jersey. I lived in Roselle, New Jersey at the time, so I had to walk 3 miles, get on the train, get to Trenton at about midnight, and then walk halfway across Trenton to the State House where he worked as a security guard, get the church keys from him, and then walk all the way across, because the train station's in the middle of town, the church was on the west side of town, the state building's on the east side of town. I had to walk all the way across Trenton. By then it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I got to walk through Wilbur section, which is like a crack-infested neighborhood. There I was, 5'4", 120-pound guy. I had to walk through the worst neighborhoods in Trenton. I wasn't scared to, because people generally left me alone. Despite the fact that I look younger than I am, and I was still in my 20s, I looked like a teenager. But it's amazing that I never got robbed or anything. But anyhow, then I get to the church by like 1:30 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and the place is a mess. And it took me like 4 or 4.5 hours to clean the church. And that was like the norm. You want revelation, you gotta serve. You want mysteries of the kingdom, you gotta serve. There are a lot of things in the kingdom are on a need-to-know basis, and if you are not useful, you don't need to know. Why would God reveal to you the secrets of people's lives and their secret needs and their secret hurt and their secret pain, their secret shame, the thing that they need to be restored from, when God knows you're not going to pray for them anyway? When he knows you're just going to gossip about it. Why is God going to show you their heartbreak when it's not going to break your heart? He's got no reason to. And the main reason we don't serve is because we're selfish. And we're selfish because we don't love. We say we do. But we're told in 1 Corinthians 14 that love is not selfish. And if you're selfish, you're definitely not walking in love. You're not. Yeah, sure. But the point here is not just about volunteer work. The point is serving in the kingdom. That is the point of it. But here's the problem. We take that principle, most of us as leaders, and we put people to work in the ministry, but it's only for the local ministry, and it's never with an eye on, okay, let me give Andrea an assignment, and it's going to be useful for the ministry, and it's going to be a blessing to the ministry, but it's not anything that's going to help prepare her for what God called her to do. That doesn't make any sense. And a lot of leaders do that, and partially they do it because they're not even thinking to prepare that person for their call. They're not. It doesn't occur to them because they're selfish. And we turn people into ministry assets instead of kingdom assets. When the truth is, the way we're supposed to put people to work, and if you want a leader to put you to work, you need to be kingdom-minded yourself. And if you got a leader that is that selfish, that isn't kingdom-minded, that isn't looking to put you to work in a way that's going to help groom you and prepare you, why are you even there? I mean, I hate to say that, but why are you there? It makes no sense. Ain't nobody got time for that. and pastors, bishops, grand poobahs, whatever you want to call yourselves, you guys need to do better. You gotta start actually caring about your people. I'm amazed at how leaders don't have time to pray in detail for their members. Yeah, some people are just seat warmers. Some people you can't even make any use of them because they are no use. But part of it is part of the reason that the main reason people don't serve is because they don't really love. But another reason why sometimes people are hesitant about serving is because the ministry's not putting them to good use. I mean, my goodness, I was in that church 4 years when I finally got to teach a Sunday school. Never got to actually preach. Got to teach adult Sunday school. 4 years. Wasn't exactly being put to the best use. So it wasn't a matter of, I'm bored and I want to do something. Well, kind of, yeah. I'll be transparent about that. I was bored. That night that I was there, like 4 hours cleaning the church, I don't even think I got to sleep. I actually prayed. And I said, Father, the man of God, 2 years ago said he was going to give me an assignment to teach. Make him keep his word. The next day, after the service, he approaches me and tells me God told him to have me teach on spiritual authority. That God said to tell me to take my time and be thorough. That's how I ended up teaching 17 weeks on spiritual authority. It's not that he wanted to. God had to twist his arm. And that's what it took. But that kind of made things worse between me and him in the end. But the point I'm making here is that it shouldn't be that way. Why do we have somebody in? How can you have somebody in your midst that clearly has a strong gift to teach, and you're not going to put them to work? My goodness, give me a physical church. I'd put people to work, man. There's a few people in Rift Online Church. If I could, I'd put them on payroll. I'd take them off their job. Like, no. You're not going back to that job. You're too valuable to the kingdom. We're gonna find some. Let's go on a fast and find out what we need to have you doing. As it is, I've been doing some fasting, trying to find out what I need to be doing with these folks. Well, that's another thing. They understand that for themselves. See, this is the dark underbelly of how we teach on submission and authority and service. They understand that God set them in authority, but doesn't understand that he set you under authority. The centurion, when he said, I am also a man set under authority. I tell this one to go and he goes, I tell that one to come and he comes. He understood that the whole reason his soldiers obeyed him was they weren't just obeying him. They were obeying him because he's under the general, and the general's under the emperor. The actual title of the Roman emperor was Princeps et Imperator. Prince was his meaning king, that he's the head honcho of the whole empire. Imperator, emperor, is actually a military title. That's like saying commander-in-chief. The reason you got to respect and obey the centurion is because he's under the authority of the emperor. His orders come from the emperor. That's why you obey. He understood that he had authority because he's under authority. And somehow we don't understand that the people under our authority have authority because they're under authority. And their authority is intended to be used. Can you imagine a Roman legion where they don't bother to use the centurions? Not going to win too many battles that way. If the Romans used their military the way we use people in the church, the Roman Empire would have it probably would have never existed. No, there's no way. Part of the reason why the Roman Empire was what it was because their military was strong and very organized. Their highways were safe to travel on. You didn't go try to rob people on Roman highways because there were Roman legions patrolling. They find out you're robbing folks, guess what? You got a whole legion coming your way. Or at least a century is 100 soldiers. Good luck with that. One robber against 100 soldiers. And if there's a bunch of you, they're sending a legion. They might send 2 legions. So now you've got 4,000 men after you. They're going to get you. And you know what the Romans like to do to criminals? They crucify them. It's not going to be pretty. And so the Roman highways tended to be safe. That's why people traveled a lot. That's part of the reason why Paul was able to travel the way he could travel. Because they had a system of travel, largely because of their military. And like I said, the church if they operated their military the way the church operates with people, the Roman Empire couldn't exist. Because then their military would be weak. That's why a lot of times the church is weak. And because of our selfishness, we even hinder the growth of the ministry. Even the ministry itself. Because if this person is supposed to be a kingdom asset, and usually when we turn somebody into a ministry asset, we've only got a mind for what am I going to get out of them. It's a one-way relationship. In fact, for a long time, I would not do business with Christians, especially not with preachers. I wouldn't do business with preachers. You know why? Because all the preachers I know were so selfish, they would not want to do anything with you unless it was for their exclusive benefit. It couldn't be a win-win situation. It couldn't. If you were going to get something out of it, they weren't interested. It had to only benefit them. I'll give you an example. Pastor of the church I was at, he had an invention. He still hasn't put that invention out there. It was a pretty cool invention. I won't say what it was, but it was something that would have sold. That thing would have made a few $100 million easily, because it was so useful. He wanted me to draw up the patent application. I started working on the provisional patent application so that you have that in process, and then you have the patent application, but then you can start marketing it while you have the provisional patent. Because once the provisional patent is granted, you have your intellectual property is protected, and you can start trying to market it. And that thing is I was starting to line up companies that would either manufacture it or market it, and it would have made so much money. But here's the thing, brother didn't want to pay me, and I was kind of willing to do it for free, but this thing was taking up so much of my time that I couldn't really take on much in the way of other clients. And I had bills to pay. I needed to eat. And so I decided to test him. And I prayed before. He did. To this day, he don't know I prayed this. I said, Father, I don't remember my exact words, but something like this. I said, Father, I'm going to tell him that I need to charge him something because I got bills to pay. If he says how much, I will say $1, and I will trust you to provide. If he does not say how much, if he does not ask me how much, but then doesn't want me to do this for him anymore, then I know he was planning to take advantage of me. That was my test. That if he asked me how much, then I knew he would, because supposedly the promise was that once it made money, he was going to hook me up. But that was my test. That was my fleece, so to speak. Sure enough, when I let him know that, his response was, I thought you were doing this to help me out. And he tried to guilt trip me. He said, well, take all this stuff, put it back, and, put it in an envelope and send it back to me. I'll just have to get a lawyer to do it. Now, he wasn't willing to pay me a dime, but a lawyer would charge him anywhere between $8,000 to $12,000 to do the same thing. Didn't want to pay me a dime. And so here's the thing. Maybe you think I'm being harsh. If somebody is trying to sell me something, or let's say that somebody tells me they got to charge me for something, my immediate question is how much. I will even interrupt them in what they're saying, and I'll say, how much? Because I want to know. In fact, I've had people I try to do business with who got mad at me because I wanted to know how much. They wanted to get a commitment out of me and get me to say yes to what they were selling without even knowing how much it was. I said, I got to know how much. How do I say yes to this? What if it's 50 grand and I don't have 50 grand? I want to know how much. In sales, they call that a buying question. If somebody's asking how much, it means they're probably seriously considering buying whatever it is you're selling. That would have been my response. Okay, how much? And then maybe there might be a need to negotiate or whatever, but the fact that he didn't ask how much and his immediate response was, I'm just going to pay a lawyer to do it. So that what translation was, screw you, I'll pay somebody else thousands of dollars, but I'm not paying you a dime. And that said a lot about how he valued the relationship and how he valued the person. And you think this is not, I'm not saying that I'm not that special, man. This happens to a lot of people. Because this is the model of leadership that we've been taught. It's a pimp mentality. Would it surprise you to know he doesn't have a church anymore? He lost his church a couple months after the last time he crossed me. And because the last nasty thing he did to me, he did publicly, and a bunch of people left the church. I left, and then shortly after, a bunch of other people left because they were so disgusted with what he did. And but this is how you got. If you're gonna lead God's people, you can't make them an asset to you. Maybe they'll be an asset to you. They should be an asset to you. If you're serving with a man of God, you should be an asset to him. But you have to be an asset to the kingdom. You look at Moses as a paradigm for leadership. Moses did not make them an asset to Moses, even though I'm sure they were. Most of the people loved Moses. I'm sure they did plenty of stuff for Moses. If he needed something done, they'd do it because he was Moses. But Moses' agenda was not to make them useful to him. Everything Moses was doing was about protecting and providing for them, and preparing them to enter the promised land. You know how God told them that he was going to take them a roundabout way. And it was going to take them 2 years to get to the promised land because they weren't ready for war yet. Moses had to get them ready to conquer the promised land. Everything he did, and it wasn't even just for them. What Moses was doing was for the future of Israel. Because it wasn't just about that generation getting into the promised land and getting all their stuff. But it was about establishing Israel as a nation, as a culture. That they would take the promised land, and then it would be for their descendants. And I think my battery is getting low. Let me just check. I'll be right back, guys. I gotta check for my cord. I should have checked before, but you can probably still hear me because I'm only about 20 feet away. Give me a second, folks. I know I got the cord somewhere around here. Yes, I do. All right, I'm coming. I'm almost back. I got my laptop here, and I can just plug my iPad into the laptop. I'm almost back on camera. Don't anybody be scared, don't cry. Anyway, I'm back, and I've got my cord. So I plug it into the laptop, but Moses' agenda wasn't even just the children of Israel, the ones he was immediately dealing with, but Moses' agenda was the nation. And likewise, as a leader, your agenda can't just be the church or this local body, even though that's part of your responsibility. Your agenda, your goal has to be the building of the kingdom. It's got to be about the kingdom. You got to have your mind on how does this ministry fit into the kingdom at large. What is this person's role in the kingdom? What will their role be in this ministry, but also what's their role in the kingdom? Well, one God, one church. We're all supposed to be one, but we're not. We got 40,000 denominations? And part of it is because of that underlying selfishness. We try to build a ministry, but not the kingdom. That's why our tagline is building God's kingdom in you. And we mean it. My goal is to build the kingdom in you. Because I want you to rise up. I want you to grow up. I want you to mature. I want you to be whole. Because what if Jerome is supposed to have like a whole television network? What if that's the end game for him? And then what if that's the end game for him, but then I preach to him and I teach him as if he's only intended to just do a few things on the internet and that's it, not really amount to much. I'll take a look for it. I'm not sure if I saw it yet, but I'll take a look after the broadcast. What if, because goodness, it's like, especially, they used to joke about women in the church that the pastors would give them the title of evangelist or missionary, and said that's what we call them when they preach better than we do, which I found funny. But we do that to somebody, and we give them a role, but never with a mind to what if God has more for them. Maybe he doesn't, but maybe he does. And if he does, how do I get them there? That's why whenever we take on a new member for the Rift, we have what I call the discovery call. And we spend some time on the phone, sometimes an hour, sometimes an hour and a half or 2 hours. And we talk about their call, and we talk about what God has purposed for them. So that I have a better understanding of who they are in the kingdom, who God intended them to be. So that I know how to pray for them. So I know how to disciple them. So I know how to mature them. So I know how to give them direction. And I'm amazed at pastors who don't do that, because it's like, okay, you preach on Sunday, and you teach on Wednesday, or you make one of your elders teach on Wednesday, so you're preaching once a week. What in the world do you do with the rest of your time? I hate to say that, but hang on a second. Is this cord I have next to me? I just got to plug my laptop in. I can do that from here, because I already got it nearby. There we go. Alright. So I have a low battery warning on the laptop because I plugged the iPad into the laptop. So I was drawing power from there. Okay. So, how do we solve this problem? We solve this problem by being kingdom-minded. Not just seeking the benefit of our own ministry, and maybe I neglect that a bit because I'm about the kingdom. But we have to think of the kingdom. Just like Moses was thinking of a nation. Not just these people, but the future generations. How do we protect them? How do we provide for them? How do we make sure that they get what's theirs? Because there's something that belongs to you in the kingdom. There is a portion for you. God did not save you for you to be a bench warmer in the kingdom. You may not be called to kingdom leadership. You are called to kingdom participation. You got some kind of job to do. There is an identity for you in the kingdom. But we can't get there if all we are is a ministry asset. Now, if you want to be an asset to the kingdom, that does entail being an asset to whatever ministry you're involved with. I'm not saying you got to be part of a local church, because I don't think that's even necessary. We don't run a local church. We're an online ministry. But you do need to be part of some community of the faith. There needs to be some kind of accountability in your life. There has to be somebody teaching you. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day. I think it might have been yesterday. A prophet from, I forget where he is in the States. We were on the phone. I was planning. I budgeted an hour to talk to him. We talked for about 2.5 hours. But, because I was having a good time. And I said to him, I spent about more than 10 years trying to find a mentor. Never found one. I said, there's days where I wish I had a mentor, but I don't. And so that's a little hard. But there should be, I do have accountability. There are people I'm accountable to. They may not be an authority over me, but they are accountability. So you need some accountability. You need, especially if you know, I put it this way, if you know you're not spiritually mature, you definitely need somebody in your life to help you mature. And not someone on your level either. Because sometimes we like to be around just our equals in the faith. That don't work. The Bible says the companion of fools will be destroyed. The last thing you want to do is hang around people on your level, or entirely people on your level. In fact, even in the business world, motivational speakers like to tell you, hang around with 9 millionaires and you will become the 10th. They tell you don't hang out with broke people. Don't hang out with people that are not business owners. Don't hang out with people who don't have vision for their life. Try to find people smarter than you. Try to find people who are at least smarter than you in some area. Folks that got something you don't have, and also make sure you got something they don't have. And I know a guy who likes to say deliver value first, and that's his way of establishing a relationship. Is he finds some way to be valuable to that person first before he ever tries to do business with them. And he gets paid. And he gets paid. But we don't understand this in the kingdom. So to some extent you need to be a ministry asset, but you can't just be a ministry asset. The whole point, and this is what leaders miss, the whole point of people in your church, people in your ministry being an asset to the ministry is for them to become an asset to the church, to an asset to the kingdom. Because sooner or later, they got to enter, even if they never have a ministry outside of yours, sooner or later they got to interact with the outside world, don't they? They're not living in a bubble. They sure don't live in a cave. So it behooves you as a leader to at the very least make sure that they become a living epistle, that they become a living embodiment of the kingdom, so that everywhere they go, they bring the kingdom with them. I wish leaders would get this. And a lot of leaders understand this. They just don't bother with it because being selfish is so much easier. And unfortunately, being selfish pays. When you do it the selfish way, you actually draw more people to your ministry. You know why? This is why. Because usually people want to be like the selfish guy because they're selfish too. That's why they'll serve in a ministry to pay their dues. And they even call it paying their dues. Because everything they're doing in serving is usually for a selfish reason. They're only serving because they want to get promoted. My friend the deacon was like, they said, I work for promotion. And both of them actually ended up spilling their guts to me. I don't even think they realized they said it. And they told me all their motives of why they were doing what they were doing in the church. And it was all because they wanted to get promoted. They wanted promotion. They wanted to be somebody. They wanted to make connections. I'm sure I probably would have had more of a ministry if I played along and played the game. Because this is what you do. You pay your dues and you be somebody's flunky for a few years. Yes, pastor, no, pastor. You do whatever the pastor says. Don't question anything. Even if you disagree with it, go along with it. And in the hope that he'll like you enough to one day recommend you to somebody, or one day promote you, or promote your ministry, help you find places to preach, which most of them are not. And the sad thing is, people do that not knowing that most pastors are not going to do that anyway. They're not. And usually they kind of dangle that in front of you. That's the carrot on the stick. Actually, I had one pastor try to get me to join his church years ago. So I think it was right after I left the church I was in. And he wanted me to join his ministry. And he was pretty open about it, that he wanted me to help him build the church numerically, help him do street ministry and stuff like that, and help the church grow numerically. And I said if I did that, then once I did that with him for a while, that he would recommend me to people and help get some doors open for me as far as places to preach. I turned it down, because by that point I didn't trust any preacher. Because here's the thing, if you know I'm called to that, and you know I am equipped for that now, why are you going to have me be your flunky for 2 or 3 years before you ever recommend me to anybody? I mean, I get that sometimes you have to test people and all that. But at that point, you already knew I was ready. You already knew I was equipped. You already knew if I'm good enough. I'll put it this way: if you trust me enough to help build your ministry, why don't you trust me enough to recommend me? So for me, that was a red flag. If I'm good enough to preach to folks to help grow your church, why am I not good enough for anything else? Yeah, and it may not have been an intentional hustle. I liked the guy. We were cool and all that, but that stood out as a red flag. And I'm not saying that he was out to hustle me, but he probably would have hustled me just the same, even unintentionally. Because the desire to build that church, well, if he starts recommending me to people, let's say he recommends me to one preacher, and they're like, wow, this guy really has something, they recommended me to somebody else, and before you know it, I got a speaking calendar full of speaking engagements. Now I'm too busy to do the original plan, huh? Or at least that's the assumption, that's the fear. Of course, he didn't know that I wouldn't do that. If I gave my word about something, I would keep my word. And I would actually turn down speaking invitations if I had some obligations to take care of at the home church. You take care of home first. And, but he didn't know that, because that's not what he would have done. And that's another thing you gotta understand about leaders. They typically will judge you based on what they are. To the pure, all things are pure. To the defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure. I'm not saying he was defiled, but because he wouldn't have been inclined to do that. Or wasn't too willing to believe that I was. Because we tend to project our own issues on everybody else. That's kind of human nature. And you want to be an asset to the kingdom. Be an asset to the ministry, but my goodness, leaders, don't just put people to work. Put them to work in a way that makes sense for what God has called them to do. Put them to work in a way that is consistent with the kingdom identity, at least that points in that direction. Yes, they may have to start at the bottom, but my goodness, don't keep them there. Because like I've said before, if you have spiritually parented them, you have groomed them, you have equipped them, you have poured into them, everything they do in the kingdom, you got a piece of that action. There are some folks who are going to walk in the office of the apostle. They're going to walk in the office of the prophet. They're going to do great exploits in the kingdom. Some of them will do it, probably have a bigger ministry than me. Guess what? I got a piece of that action. When it comes my time to stand before my Savior and receive my reward, guess what? I'm getting some of the reward for everything they will do in the kingdom. Because I helped put them there. Leaders, if you understood that. And I don't do it for that reason. I was been doing that since before I understood that. You don't lose anything by people growing up. You don't. If anything, there's less work for you to do. You know, a couple months ago, we appointed our first few elders. Hey there, Janet, welcome to the broadcast. And I don't really give them much to do, because I don't like to burden people, and we're still so small that we don't really have a whole lot to do for them. I just ask them to pray for the ministry and all that, and every once in a while we'll meet for prayer online or whatever. But but I don't like to give people a lot of duties, and there isn't really a lot to do anyway, yet. But I am enjoying that they do take care of some stuff, like, especially within the Facebook group. There's one in particular that will just deal with stuff, and she's kind of aggressive about it, which I find useful, and also find it kind of entertaining. Oh man, Lisa cracks me up. Lisa don't play, but it's good. So so there, at least with regard to the Facebook group, there's a little less work for me to do. So how do we not see this? I won't have to travel to 46 different countries if I just teach people and train people who are supposed to go to 46 different countries. And then like I said, it's less work for me. I still get to work in the kingdom, but I don't get to overwork myself. I can still go up to my studio, which I'm hoping. I got so much to do around here. I'm gonna put my foot down. I think Wednesday is gonna be my studio day, because I haven't painted anything in a few months, and that's got to change, because I got an easel and I want to use it. So Wednesday, I think I'm gonna just paint something and do some artwork all day. But well, my sound is actually all the way up, so it might be on your end, because my mouth is like 1.5 feet away from the microphone on this thing, so it should be able. The sound should be good. If anybody has a sound problem, anyone else has a sound problem, let me know. And sometimes it's Periscope. So yeah, that's strange. It's part of Periscope. Let me tell you, it will make things easier for you. And here's the thing: a lot of us in leadership, we do delegate. Well, we delegate the stuff we don't want to do. We delegate the grunt work. We delegate. Like, I know one ministry, they were actually hiring, and my wife actually, I think she showed me the ad or something like that. I wasn't interested, but I looked at it anyway because I got curious. They were looking for pastors because they have a number of churches, and what they do is, they'll put you to pastor one of their churches, but you must preach on what they give you to preach. So there's no preparing, there's no seeking God. You must preach whatever they give you to preach. And you also get to do all the home visitations and all the hospital visitations. Basically everything about being a pastor that's hard, that's time consuming, that is laborious, that's what you get to do. And so that he doesn't have to do it. Nah, I think there's only 6 right now, though. So he don't have to do it. So all he has to do, he only has to really do 2 things: preach on Sunday and count the money. Because he's going to pay that the pastors of these churches, their salary is going to be $35,000 a year, which is really not that much in the Toronto area. That's like barely surviving in the Toronto area. And I'm sure he's probably making $1 million, $2 million a year. And so it's a bit of a hustle. And then we tend to do that, and we got to stop doing that. Put people to work in a way that really makes sense. Yeah, they call it the ministry pastor, which really just means the grunt. And don't get me wrong, it's good to delegate, but don't just give them assignments in things that you don't want to do, or that you want to bother with because you don't like doing it. Because dealing with stuff in the group, I actually like doing that. I enjoy dealing with the unruly and the troublemakers. I find it amusing and entertaining sometimes, maybe a little too entertaining. But I don't mind somebody else doing it. We can't just delegate what we don't like. We also need to. Oh yeah. I sometimes. Oh man, I sometimes have some fun at their expense. Because I know if the way I look at it, if you're coming in to try to cause trouble, then I'm gonna give you some trouble, and I'm gonna enjoy doing it to you. You're not going to damage the people of God when I'm around. You're not going to come in. You're not going to come up in the Facebook group looking to do something stupid, looking because if you deceive somebody, you're going to cause them harm. You're not doing that. Even the ones that are not my members are still alive. I still see them as sheep under my care. I see you're a wolf, I'm getting my slingshot. Shepherds are not nice to wolves. In fact, there's a breed of dog, Anatolian Shepherd. There's several types of Anatolian Shepherd, but all of them have this in common. They're highly territorial. In fact, that kind of dog you should never have in the city. You live in the city, don't buy that dog. Because even if you got a big fence, he's going to get over that fence because he wants to establish a perimeter of about, some of them, it can be 2 or even 5 mile radius. They like to establish as their territory. And so it's kind of dangerous for the other dogs around because he might kill them. Because what they do, when they're taking care of the sheep, some of them will stay with the sheep, and then a few of them will peel off, and they'll scour the perimeter looking for predators and hunting them down and killing them. They don't wait for the wolf to show up where the sheep are at. They go looking for the wolf. They go looking for the coyote. That's what they bred them for, and they enjoy it. Real livestock guarding dogs, they like their job. So I don't know. It seems to be okay to kind of enjoy dealing with the troublemakers. And it's funny how we're, especially leaders, we have this tendency. We show all our aggressiveness with the people of God and not with the ones that are actually causing harm. Pastors, you want your people to be a ministry asset? Here's the easiest way to make them a ministry asset. Make them a kingdom asset. Because if they are an asset, if you are focused on making them an asset to the kingdom, they can't help but be an asset to the ministry. And if you've really done their job in maturing them, you don't got to worry about betrayal. You don't got to worry about them turning on you. Because in many cases, that kind of leadership instills a lot of loyalty. But in many cases, God may even call them to their own apostolic ministry and they're still not going to leave you. They'll just do their apostolic thing under the auspices of your ministry. I would have stayed in the church where I was at. I wanted to stay under authority and do what God called me to do under the umbrella of that ministry. But there wasn't room for my calling and his ego. And there's no reason that a person shouldn't be able to. You should be able to flow in the fullness of what God called you to, even under the ministry that you're presently in, unless God has called you to start a whole new one. And even then, that can still be home base. Even then, you can still be connected. Even then, that can still be your accountability, and that can still be authority over you. Authority, not control. Now, there's a few ministries that I oversee that they recognize me as being an authority over them, but I don't try to control what they're doing with their ministry. I don't tell them what to do unless I feel it's necessary. And even then, I can make them do what I tell them. They usually listen because they know that. Here's another thing, leaders. You want folks to listen to you because we like to beat people down with the subject of submission to authority. You want an easy way to get people to submit to your authority. Lead for real. Lead with love. Because and I've told this story before, so I'm going to tell the short version of it. I'm going to close with this. There was a brother in that church. He didn't come to church much because he would disappear sometimes for months at a time. What the pastor didn't know was that he still came to the 5 a.m. prayer. which the pastor never came to. It was the fire and prayer was actually run by a guy from another church, and they just let him use the church for fire and prayer. And there was a bunch of us, including men from our church, the few that there were, would get together at 5 a.m. 6 days a week to pray. And that brother would usually show up sometimes for months at a time. And he was a bit of a problem. Had some rebellion issues. One time even got into an argument with the pastor in front of everybody. And the pastor humiliated him because he was losing the argument. And you could hear in the man's voice, he sounded like he was about to cry. You could hear his voice cracking. He says, when you do this, it makes you feel like you don't love me. And then the pastor humiliated him a little more. And they said, well, I just came here to hear Brother Sam because he came when I was teaching on spiritual authority. And then he left, and I never saw him in that church again. But what had happened with that brother was one morning, the guy running the prayer ministry noticed something about that brother. That as rebellious as he was toward everybody, as much as if they told him to do something, he questioned it. He wanted to know why. He wanted to know. He would have like five questions, 10 questions, 20 questions for you before he would obey what you told him to do. For everybody except me. If I told him to do something, he would just do it. No questioning, no arguing, no delay. I probably could have told him to stand on one foot and he would have done it. I wouldn't do that to him, but I'm pretty sure he probably would have done it. And then afterward, he probably would have asked, what was that about? But the leader of the prayer ministry asked him. Because this is how preachers are. He wasn't asking because he was really curious or he wanted to know what was different. He just wanted to know, why are you listening to him and not me? It was about his ego. And so he asked him, he says, I noticed it. People ask you to do something, they tell you to do something, you always question it, and sometimes you argue, but with Brother Sam, he tells you to do something, you just do it. And then he told him why. He says, I always listen to Brother Sam because I know Brother Sam loves me. One of the saddest things I've ever heard anybody say in a church. Because that statement, it wasn't so much about saying, wow, Brother Sam's such a great guy. No, maybe I'd like to think I'm a great guy, but it wasn't about that. The tragedy was that in a room full of men that pray together 6 days a week, there's only one guy in the room that he's sure loves him and has his best interests at heart. That's tragic. That's amazingly sad. His issue wasn't rebellion. They all thought that rebellion was his issue, and the cure for rebellion is humiliation, which is ridiculous. Humiliation doesn't get submission. It'll get subjugation. You don't get submission through humiliation. You humiliate somebody, all you're going to get is subjugation. You'll get them to bow down. You might get them to shut up, but you're not. You haven't won their heart. They're going to comply. You'll get compliance, not submission. They will comply, but only because they fear the humiliation. Only because the pain of what you're going to do to them is worse than the pain of obeying you. You want people to submit to you? Have the nerve to really love God's people. Because when you really love them, you're going to really pray for them. And guess what? Not all of them will be able to tell, but a lot of them will be able to tell. And they will know that they are loved. And they will know that when you tell them to do X, Y, Z, they know that you're telling them to do, even if you don't explain why, they will know that what you're telling them to do is in their best interest. And you're telling them because your heart is set on what is best for them, because you want what's best for the kingdom, and you want them walking in God's purpose for real. You want to build God's kingdom in them. It's a lot easier to get people to do what you say. The biggest struggle a lot of leaders have with people not following their leadership is you're not leading from a place of love. You're leading from a place of ego and selfish and vanity and pride. It's about your agenda. It's about your ambition. Well, thank you. I'm glad for that. I try to be worthy of respect. But it's so much easier that you don't gotta fight with people. I don't fight with anybody. No, 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 no. We're not doing that. Any more than I would fight with my son. I don't have one, but if I did, I might have to correct him here and there. But it's not like it's going to come to blows and we're going to be in a fist fight rolling around on the living room floor. No. And I learned this thing with children when I was a teenager. So my sister used to babysit children, and by that I mean their parents thought she was babysitting them. Their parents would drop them all off at the house, and she'd be there until the last kid came, and then once the parent was gone, about half an hour later, when she's sure they weren't coming back, but they didn't forget anything, and they went off to work, she'd go out with her friends and leave them with me. So all those people, all those years, did not know that their children, anywhere from the ages of like 4 to 8, were actually being taken care of by a 15, 16-year-old boy. And I learned this stuff. Looking back on it in retrospect, I didn't know at the time, but I learned how to take care of God's people by taking care of those little kids. I never had a discipline problem with any of those kids. I could have 8 or 10 little kids in the house. And I had total control, man. Nobody acted up. They didn't fight each other. You know, I never had a situation where, you know, I don't have Lindsay saying Ruthie poked me in the eye, or Drew saying that Evan hit me. No, there was never any fights. Nobody pulled anybody's hair. All the stuff that you usually see with little kids misbehaving toward each other, none of that ever happened. We never had any drama. In fact, I think just about all of them that I'm aware of look back on those days and they still talk about how much fun they had. I know years ago my little sister was saying that, you know, that she was like like in her mid-20s, talking about how much fun it was, and it was like, you know, 20 years previous, she still remembered, because I made it fun. I found ways to keep them busy. They were too busy having fun to fight each other, get mad at each other, or, you know, nobody fought over toys. No drama, because it wasn't necessary. And part of the reason why it was easy to do that was because I loved them. And because I loved them, I didn't even notice that my sister was taking advantage of me, having me taking care of these kids. She was getting paid for it. I wasn't. Kind of underhanded of her. And, but God taught me through that. Looking back, that's part of how I learned this. It's not complicated, leader. It's not rocket science. And if you don't really love your people that much, you can ask God to pour His love out in your heart. We're supposed to be full of His love. That enables everything else. The Bible says perfect love casts out fear. Guess what? If you walk in that kind of love, you also won't be scared of them growing up. You won't be scared of them having a greater anointing than you. You won't be scared of them having a bigger ministry. You won't be scared of them prophesying better than you. Goodness, I wish all my people would prophesy better than me. Be a lot less work for me to do. Heck, I might even ask them for a word. You know, all right, good night. God bless you. I think we're going to close on that anyway. The great secret to all this, to making your people a kingdom asset, is to love them for real. Because if you do, you're going to want what's best for them. You're going to want them to grow. You're going to want them to mature. You're going to want them to become exactly who God intended them to be, even if that is not what's best for you. I hope this was helpful. If it was, do us a favor and share it on whatever social media you like to use. And pay us a visit over richchurch.org. Tell a friend about us. Meanwhile, folks, God bless you. God keep you. I try to be useful. And I am going to sign out Y'all have a good night, and keep loving God more than anything else. Brother Sam signing out.